Hola amigos, bienvenidos nuevamente a tu canal Namaskar. Nos puedes encontrar en www.namaskar.cl y también en nuestro canal de YouTube y en redes sociales. Bien, en esta oportunidad vamos a ir adentrándonos a temas más enigmantes y apasionantes. El día de hoy vamos a hablar sobre los ovnis. ¿Qué son estos objetos extraños con un vuelo inteligente, con maniobras que no condicen con nada terrestre? Bien, para ir adentrándonos al tema, ¿qué es el significado de la palabra ovni? Sus siglas significan objeto volador no identificado, pero esto nos conlleva mucho más. No solamente porque sea una palabra no tengamos que regir a ella, sino que al suceso mismo, tanto al avistamiento, tanto a los testigos o al testigo, y tanto también a la historia que involucra el poder ver un ovni. También en este tema se ven los contactos con otras esferas, con grandes gobiernos que están contactados ya con estos ovnis y con estas entidades que le llamaban anteriormente los EBS o entidades biológicas extraterrestres, o lisa y llanamente aliens o extraterrestres. Hay muchos a quienes les cuesta como procesar esta información, ya que se basan en lo científico y en lo mundano. Pues lo científico no todo es cierto y lo mundano va siempre cambiando las cosas. No es tan estructurado todo, siempre hay muchísimas posibilidades. Desde que partió la palabra ovni en lo que a la época moderna se refiere, esto ocurre en el año 1947. El espectacular caso Roswell se refiere a un choque de una nave de origen desconocido con la Tierra, justo en el lugar que es Estados Unidos, Nuevo México, Roswell. Esto ocurre el 7 de julio de 1947. El suceso se considera como el nacimiento de la ufología moderna. Ya vamos a comentar en otros videos y vamos a ir mostrando información de que la ufología no nació allí, sino que viene de miles y miles de años, incluso mucho más antiguos que los sumerios y que los Vedas. Pues bien, volviendo al tema de Roswell, esto ocurre en el mandato del presidente Harry Truman en Estados Unidos. Un controversial caso que hasta el día de hoy tiene muchas implicancias, también muchas aristas, porque hay algunos que dicen que fue un globo sonda que se cayó a la Tierra y que sus fragmentos fueron prácticamente los de un globo. Otros dicen que sí, verdaderamente cayó un objeto volador, que dentro de ese objeto habían tripulantes extraterrestres y que algunos de ellos están vivos hasta el día de hoy. Esa es como la información no oficial, no ciencia, por llamarlo de alguna forma, pero que sí han llevado incluso a realizar películas como El Día de la Independencia, en el cual muestran también el Área 51, que hasta el día de hoy también ha sido negada por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Y no solamente ocurre ese acontecimiento en ese año, en 1947, sino que también el 24 de junio un piloto norteamericano llamado Kenneth Arnold aseguró haber visto nueve objetos volando en una montaña de Washington llamada la montaña Rainier o el monte Rainier, mientras él buscaba a una aeronave militar que se había extraviado. Él volaba una aeronave que se llamaba Cal Air A2 y describió dentro de su bitácora cómo era el vuelo de estos nuevos objetos, que para él, siendo piloto, los encontró sumamente erráticos, por decirlo así de alguna forma, de la forma en cómo volaban en ese año los aviones conocidos, ¿ok? Como una cola de cometa china. Algo así más o menos fue lo que escribió él, lo que vio en esos nuevos objetos. Y de ahí nace la palabra plato volador o platillo volador, como la conocemos hoy en día. Pero que vamos a ir viendo en próximos capítulos que plato volador u ovni o UFO va mucho más allá que una simple palabra. No es solamente el ver un objeto y listo. No, es mucho más allá, ya que, por ejemplo, hay un informe de las Naciones Unidas que se reveló en el año 1947 que más de 150 millones de personas han sido testigos de avistamiento del fenómeno ovni en el mundo. Un dato no menor. Más de 20.000 fueron avistamientos con aterrizajes. La empresa de opinión pública Roper informó que el 80% de los estadounidenses han tenido avistamiento ovni. Y no solo avistamientos, sino que también abducciones, que eso también es un tema muy importante. Y esto quiere decir que 4 de cada 5 personas creen que realmente existe el fenómeno ovni y que el gobierno y los gobiernos ocultan información. Y esto es por hacer caso a la Matrix, tema que ya hemos visto anteriormente y vamos a seguir ahondando aún más en los próximos videos. Bien, la idea no es hacerte cambiar tu creencia, sino de que, como dice el FBI, investiga para que sepas que hay mucho más de lo que tú verdaderamente crees. Por ejemplo, vamos a pasar a un par de videos. El primero de ellos es de un señor llamado Paul Hellyer. Él no es un cualquier tipo, es el ex ministro de Defensa de Canadá. Así que vamos por el video.
My name, as I said, was Paul Hellyer. I'm a former Minister of National Defence for Canada. I served in 3 governments during a total of 23 and a half years as a Member of Parliament. Although as Minister of National Defence, I had sighting reports of UFOs. I was too busy to be concerned about them at the time because I was trying to unify the Army, Navy and Air Force into a single Canadian Defence Force. And that itself was a kind of battle to the finish. So this was not high on my agenda. But about 10 years ago, I started getting interested due to a young man from Ottawa sending me material on the subject. I told him I was too busy to read it, but he had confidence that someday I would. He sent me a copy of Colonel Corso's book, The Day After Roswell. It took me a while to get around to reading it, but I took it for my summer reading in 2005 and was really impressed with what was contained in it. And what I thought to myself is there are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. And so after confirming the contents of the book with a retired United States Air Force general, I accept the invitation of Victor Vigiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort Mike Bird to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. Since then, I've learned a lot from many sources, including a number of the fantastic witnesses that we have heard these last 4 days. They were so outstanding, I was just really blown away with them, the amount of information that was available. And I appreciate every single one of them. But because I'm not a ufologist, I'm a politician, there are only a few things that I want to add in that particular realm. First is that about in the 1960s sometime, it was a flotilla of UFOs headed south that crossed into NATO territory in Europe, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Supreme Allied Headquarters in Europe was naturally very shaken. Fortunately, or maybe divine providence, before the panic button was pushed, the flotilla turned around and headed back north. Obviously, they had thought maybe they were Russian, and they were very concerned about it. Anyway, the investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. So, except for that, there are just a couple of things that we've talked about that I'd like to refer to. And one was that we were referring to them as they until this morning when Linda Moulton Howe, I think she was the first one, actually named 3 different species. I have brought my latest book called Light at the End of the Tunnel, A Survival Plan for the Human Species, as an aide-memoir, and I name 5 different species here. I'm aware of more now. As a matter of fact, I saw a document just a few days ago that mentioned 20. And I think you, Mr. Chairman, were interested in some of the places they might come from. And I have in here Zeta Reticuli, R-E-T-I-C-U-L-I, Reticuli, the Pleiades, Orion, Andromeda, and the Altair star systems. So I don't think we can any more refer to them as they, because they're not an amorphous mass. They are different species and consequently may have different agendas. I don't think we can say that they all have the same agenda any more than we could say that the United States, China, and Russia had the same agenda. Our real interests may be very similar, but as of now, our perceived interests are still quite far apart. One more observation before I begin what I want to say, and that is that we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 66-year-old cadavers. And I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time, and at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working with, first of all, he was scared out of his skin, but after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally they became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs in Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with them. He wrote a book, incidentally, called Millennial Hospitality. There are 4 different versions, but Paula says that Millennial Hospitality #2 is the best. I think that's the one I read, and is a very interesting read if you want to sort of get inside the problem of what it's like to bump into these people flowing across the terrain in the desert.
Este ex ministro ha sido bastante valiente para dar a conocer esa valiosa información. Y no solamente él, sino que ahora vamos a pasar a ver un siguiente video que nos va a adentrar a otro tema más, que es la banca mundial, la banca universal, los Homo capensis, como se mencionan. Vamos a ver el video de Karen Hudes.
Welcome to the Next News Network. I'm Gary Franchi. Joining me now for the special web edition is World Bank whistleblower Karen Hudes. She's one of many of a coalition of whistleblowers who are making waves across the planet. She's joining me now in studio. Karen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on, Gary.
Karen, just before we went to air, we were discussing the global corruption, the global syndicate, the bankers. Who are these people? Who are the individuals? Who are the puppet masters pulling the strings of the bankers?
Well,
because you had mentioned the Jesuits in a previous interview, so I'm intrigued as to know where is the connection to the Jesuit order, as well as through the Vatican and beyond. There's many secret societies in the world. Many people speak of the Illuminati and the Masonic orders, the Order of the Garter, many of these super elite organizations that operate in secrecy. So I know I've named a few already, but if you could help us elaborate on these points, who are the people pulling the strings?
well, do you remember when there were ghettos and you had something called a Judenrat that were the ones that would draw up the lists of the Jews that were going to get exported the next day? Do you remember how that system worked?
Well, it was a little before my time, but history would dictate what happened in those ghettos. So elaborate.
These were traitors to their people who were helping because they thought they were going to save themselves. That's maybe why they did that, but it doesn't matter what their motives were. They were doing the work against their people. Now, think of this as an elaboration on a larger scale, and what we're dealing with actually is humanity and the elite, the secret societies, the Vatican. They're traitors to humanity, because the one at the very core that's pulling the strings is a different species. They're not the human race. They're called Homo capensis. They have been on Earth together with humanity for before this ice age. And the reason I know about this is because I was trying to help out a movie producer who couldn't get his movie. It was called The Banksters Made Off with America, Edmund Drile. And he introduced me to his network of whistleblowers. One of the people in that network is a neurologist who went to Yale Medical School and was retired, and he was trying to find out what was at the very core of all of this corruption. And
so you mentioned this species, an additional species of humans, or
no, they're not humans. They are so distinct from humans that if they were to mate with humans, their offspring would not be fertile.
Now, are you speaking of the biblical Nephilim is an entity that people have discussed and tried to understand for millennia, and that is the race of offspring of humans and the fallen angels from.
No, these are not angels. These are not spiritual.
Well, the Nephilim themselves were the offspring of the fallen angels and humanity. Is this the same
They
species?
are not fallen angels. Mm-hmm. They are critters. People who I am getting emails from saw them the day before. They look just like human beings, except they have these big skulls, And that is why in the Vatican you see these crazy meters, is what they're called. And that's why the very first Jew, Moses, wore one of those things, because he was one of those Homo capensis as well. We have DNA samples of them. And the reason we know this is because it was in the papyri of one of the pyramids. I found this out from from the internet. But what is really remarkable, actually, is that we have had so much evidence, and we haven't had any studies into it. If you look at the archaeology, there is a civilization off the coast, because the sea level has risen by 400 meters. But what do we know about this ancient pre-Ice Age civilization? We do have a map that's left over from there, because it shows the coastline of Antarctica before the ice froze on it. And it's following that landmass perfectly. So what we have is evidence. There's also evidence in South Africa. There are a lot of these skulls that you find. And what
You're speaking of the elongated skulls that have been found in graves, and even some of the skeletons found with these are in fact giant people.
That is something different. No, I'm not talking about that. I am talking about a large skull.
The elongated skull, the elongated cranium.
Some are in Peru, some are elongated. But in other places, they're just round like pumpkins. And the individuals that were seen in Egypt, I've seen drawings of what their skulls looked like. It was just massive, much larger than human being skulls. And also, you know, in a human skull, there's something they call the parietal, where it's in 3 different segments. This critter doesn't have those separations. It's just
So you're saying that this specific species of individuals is occupying the Vatican and functioning through the Jesuit order?
Yes, but they're also working in the banks in Portugal, because one of the people who saw this, you know, in Saturday Night Live, there was a broadcast of something called the Coneheads. So that's a slang word for them, although my mother refers to them as the boneheads. But they're alive and running around and doing all kinds of mischief.
Now, some people might find the information that you're presenting right now to be completely... Some people might say it's completely crazy. What do you say to those people who are watching this right now going, I don't believe a word of it?
I would say you need to read the articles that Ed Spencer has sent me. You need to look at the skulls in the museums. You need to read the DNA studies. And you need also to think about what kind of motive the human beings might have for being traitors to their species. Why would they do this? Why would we have a banking system where all the money ends up going to the Vatican and people run around starving? Why would we have... For example, if you look at what the actual teachings of Jesus Christ were, as opposed to when you had translations and various things happened and got put in there. And as some of the whistleblowers have been discussing this, information, articles on Homo capensis have disappeared from the internet. They've been taken down. And other critics who... I don't know why they're getting all the coverage they are, and they've been getting features in Wikipedia. Let me talk a little bit about Wikipedia.
Sure,
okay?
sure.
I had an experience with Wikipedia because I got involved in trying to edit the biography on Robert Zoellick, who was the World Bank president. And I was trying to explain to people that the United States had lost the gentleman's agreement, which you could demonstrate. You could see. I couldn't get that into Wikipedia. They were clearly being controlled by this group that that is controlling all the capital markets.
So do you think that these same people were preventing your Wikipedia edits?
Yes, and what I'm trying to say is that this person who was attacking the information on Homo capensis had a big, long article featuring her. on Wikipedia. So I know who Wikipedia is. I know whose interests Wikipedia serves. And when somebody who's just starting out gets a big write-up, I know what that really means.
Bien amigos, dejando esos dos videos a muestra de ustedes, me gustaría que hicieran sus comentarios, que pudieran enviarme email y que pudiéramos interactuar para también empezar a mostrar los siguientes capítulos con más información. Hay muchos actores que están develando, hay muchos políticos que están divulgando, y eso es por una cuestión que hemos hablado ya en el otro canal que se llama Buscadores de Enigmas. Estamos en el tiempo de develar el velo, de sacar la malla de la Matrix que tenemos enfrente y empezar a mostrar toda la información que hay detrás, toda la mentira, toda la oscuridad que se está viviendo, todo lo negativo que se estaba plasmando y que ahora es posible, ojo, mostrar la información ante ustedes. Bien amigos, espero que les haya gustado este video. Como siempre digo, suscríbase al canal, denle un me gusta y nos vemos. Que la fuerza nos acompañe.